Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Aaron Hilliard for Mushroom Wonderland. This is a channel where I like to go out into the forest and discover what wild mushrooms are growing out here. If you could forage them for the dinner table or maybe avoid them because they're poisonous. Me and my dog Gunner like to go out into the forest. Right now we're in a forest called Banner Forest. This is a 600 plus acre county park in Kitsap County, Washington. And it's a large coniferous kind of mixed forest, but mainly conifers, these Douglas fir trees and these western hemlock trees. And this is good habitat for mushrooms here in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of the ectomycorrhizal mushrooms, or the ones that associate with trees, are the ones that people are after for eating. And they grow in a forest just like this. These trees that are about 40 to 60 years old, Douglas fir and western hemlock, mossy forest floor, and this low underbrush of huckleberry and salal and sword fern is really good habitat for mushrooms. Our main mushroom season is from September to November usually, but it's been a very mild season. Now it's a few days after Christmas and it's coming up on the new year, and people are wondering, are there still mushrooms growing out here? Is mushroom season over? It has been so mild this winter. We've had like one stretch where there was like 4 days of frost, but it really was just like radiation frost that didn't really get into these forests, didn't get underneath the brush. And so nothing really has suffered a hard freeze here in Western Washington anyways. And so that keeps mushrooms going for a while. But there will be a certain point when the mycelium that lives underground just kind of runs out of energy for producing fruiting bodies, and it will just go back to mycelial growth. But the big question is mushroom season over? Can you find some forageable, edible mushrooms to take home? Make sure to hit subscribe to the channel and come with me into the forest to discover if mushroom season is over or not, or if we can find some good mushrooms out here to take home in the basket.
Welcome to Mushroom Wonderland.
All right, so these mushrooms growing right here off of this conifer log. I can tell it's a conifer because of the bark here, how thick that bark is, and just the coloration. But conifers, that's these big evergreen trees we have here in Washington. And this one is known as the conifer tuft, related to a poisonous mushroom known as the sulfur tuft. But this one is called Hypholoma capnoides. This one's a edible mushroom that likes to grow on these logs of conifer. So it's a saprobic mushroom. It's just eating the decaying matter inside of the log. And it has a close relative, Hypholoma fasciculare, that is also known as the sulfur tuft, which is poisonous. But these ones, capnoides, are a decent edible. And you got quite a few of them here, but they are getting old, so getting late in the season. But these ones are still pretty young. So look, if you look under here at the gills, its counterpart, the fasciculare, is going to have really fluorescent kind of green gills. For this one, it's kind of a more creamy colored gill, and then it will get kind of a smoky look from those dark spores. So Hypholoma capnoides, also called the conifer tuft or the smoky gill. And I've heard it said that if a mushroom has more than one common name, that means it's really special. So these ones are decent edible. You could come out and pick those. Just make sure you don't get old rotten ones. There's still a lot of really nice young fresh ones on this log though. Kind of like a shiitake log or something, right? You could just take this home and put it in your yard, and it might grow a couple more flushes of these conifer tufts. So we see a whole bunch of these mushrooms growing right down here. Big old troop of them going all the way back up there into the bushes, and they're kind of just popping right out of the moss here. These are a pretty common one in the colder months here. This one comes out, it's a pretty robust Mycena. Its name is Minina Robusta, So this one, a saprobic mushroom. Mycena is a genus of mushrooms that have thousands of different species, several hundred here just in the Northwest. So you might notice it has a lot of striations on the edge of the cap. Those are those lines that you see right there. They're very umbonate, so they have this like nipple looking thing on the very top. And if you pick one, it's going to have pretty much white gills, and these mushrooms have white spores. And you know, like I said, they're a large genus of mushrooms. A lot of them grow off of logs. Some of them grow out of the ground, just like these ones. And these are pretty common in the cold weather. Not a good edible. Pretty much edibility unknown. They're just so small that by the time you cook these, they just disintegrate away to almost nothing. But they're probably not toxic. I don't know of any Mycena being really toxic. But one that you could just probably leave in the forest. They're very magical how they grow in these big troops. And yeah, Minina Robusta, inedible. So as we look right down in here, we get a little twofer action on a couple of different mushrooms growing here. They look pretty dang different though. Like, you would call this a mushroom, right? This is a type of mushroom. This one, Helvela vespertina, or the elfin saddle, the western elfin saddle. This one could have some toxic effects, so probably not a good one to eat. But growing right next to it, something else we would also call a mushroom, but it looks quite different, right? Two different morphologies. This one's called a basidiomycete, so it has a little cell that has 4 little prongs that will grow 4 little spores off of each little cell, a little protrusion. These are an ascomycete, so most fungi are categorized in 2 types, the basidiomycetes and the ascomycetes. And these ascos have their spores developed in little tubes, and they actually use a little bit of air pressure to shoot their spores out into the wild. And sometimes these ones are kind of old, but you can see these just plumes of spores will sometimes just come off of these like a cloud of smoke, seriously. But this one, Helvela vespertina, I just love that name. I think it's one of the most pretty mushroom names. A Disney princess or something like that. An evil Disney princess, the Helvela vespertina with her friends. These are really common this year. And then this one could look like an Amanita. In fact, I think that's what it is. At first I thought we had a Stropharia ambigua. Now I'm looking at this volvate sac down here. Not really a sac, but a cup-like vulva. It's got this partial veil that's attached to the edge of the margin there. And then we have some universal veil remnants on top. This one, we'll just call it Amanita gemata group, or the gemmed Amanitas. The Amanitas here in the Northwest aren't studied that much or that well, but so we're calling this a gematoid Amanita. I think there might be a name for it now, but I don't really know it. So anyways, a basidiomycete and an ascomycete, 2 different types of fungi. The 2 main types, right? Ascos are like morels and Gyromitra, Helvela. Even like penicillin is an ascomycete. The basidiomycete Amanita, this one's related to your red one with the white spots, Amanita muscaria. It's also related to the death cap, Amanita phalloides. This one is probably toxic, Amanita gemata group. And consider this one toxic, Helvela vespertina. Oh wow, check these out. So this one, pretty common this time of year, growing off of old conifer logs in the woods. This one's known as the conifer orange jelly fungus, or some people would call it conifer witch's butter. Some people just call it witch's butter. Like a witch would take this and smear it onto their toast. But yeah, these are saprobic mushrooms. They grow off of the wood here, and they just kind of make these orange blobs that are growing from a centralized little stalk. And yeah, you could eat this. I've actually tasted them. They had like a little taste of citrus, I thought, you know, but it could be a little bit of a placebo effect. But interesting mushroom. This one, I believe, is a basidiomycete, so it's more related to Amanitas than it is to morels, but interesting. Oh my gosh.
Then I just saw something really cool. So anyways, this is Dacromyces chrysospermus, or the orange jelly fungus. But look at right down here. I just spotted something that's really tiny and really cool looking. So let me show you. You see those two little mushrooms growing right there? Well, it looks like there were 3. Now I bet you there's a Douglas fir cone underneath the moss right here. So let me get under here. Yep. There it is. There's our Doug fir cone. And it has these little guys, Aeroscalpium PNW01. I say that because it's not, these are, gosh, my camera never wants to focus on them. This isn't the actual Aeroscalpium vulgari that's in a lot of the literature. This one comes back with a different DNA sequence, but really cool, growing off of these Douglas fir cones here. They have little teeth underneath here. If I could get it to focus, it never wants to focus on that spot. But these guys have little teeth like a hedgehog, so really cool, interesting, beautiful little mushrooms called the ear pick fungus, inedible. We'll just call that guy inedible because they're so little and cute. You ready to go, boy? So there's your orange jelly fungus and your ear pick fungus. I don't know about ear pick. I don't even know what an ear pick is. Sounds kind of nasty. So here's something growing on this log down here, and this is clearly a conifer log. This is a western hemlock, but this one could look a bit like a turkey tail, you know, a really popular medicinal mushroom a lot of people like to forage for. This is growing in little shelves just like turkey tail would, but this one growing on conifer here, this is different, and it looks different actually. This one gets kind of a violet color, and I've heard it called the violet tooth polypore. This one is actually called Trichaptum biforme, and so this one not known to be medicinal. People just don't really use it. It's a lot more rare than turkey tail actually, but you'll find it growing on conifer, and it's got a much more kind of scalloped, ruffly look to it. They're pretty thin, and they don't have that fuzzy velvet, nor do they have that creamy white pore surface underneath. These are a polypore, but they have like little teeth, and so Trichaptum is the conifer loving false turkey tail, I guess you could call it. But they're still beautiful, still doing a great job out here decomposing the wood. That needs to get done, just like these guys. Phomitopsis mountier, the red-belted conch, growing on this log like this. And it's chewing all of the white cellulose from inside this log, and it's leaving behind just brown cubical stacks of lignin. And it leaves behind the brown, that's why it gets called a brown rot decayer. And so if it wasn't for these kind of mushrooms, these logs would just pile up like pickup sticks, you know, as high as the sky. And these are super common. They grow all year round, and they often grow just like a little blob. Here's the belt, all right, the red-belted conch. So these guys, I've heard of people using them in a tea for medicinal reasons, but you know, they're not really known as a medicinal mushroom or anything else really. Just a really good ecological helper out here in the forest. The red-belted conch.
Hey y'all, I just want to urge you to hop over to mushroom-wonderland.com, get yourself some awesome swag, represent the channel, help support me and my dog Gunner and what we're doing, become a part of the community, show your mush love with some merch. Mushroom-wonderland.com, get all your coffee mugs and tumblers, hoodies and shirts and hats and all kinds of good stuff. So thanks for supporting me. Make sure to hit subscribe. Let's keep going into the forest, see what other kind of mushrooms are out here.
Caught my eye right over here. Aha! As I suspected. Growing right here at the new year. Look at that. Beautiful golden chantrell. Cantharellus formosus, the little flower of the forest. This is a choice edible mushroom. Most people who are new to foraging, in fact, just most foragers around here, are after these, the golden chantrell. So this one, you could call this one a roll rim chantrell because it's still rolled over. That means they're fresh. They would buy these on the commercial market and sell them to restaurants and chefs. These are a really sought after gourmet delicacy, and so they're growing right now at the end of December. It really doesn't have any lookalikes. This one has decurrent gills, so you can see these gills come down and run down the stem. This one's a little bit unique in its morphology and the fact that they all kind of stop in that line. That's sort of unusual. This one's a little bit soft. Just been getting a lot of rain. And it's pretty easy to spot, you know. It's just very bright and it stands out. So, Cantharellus formosus, or the Pacific golden chanterelle. What do you think, buddy? You like those? You like that? Yeah, his tail's wagging. Those are good, huh? Beautiful. All right, let's keep going. Wow. Yeah, look at that. Looks like a big leaf maple covered in these late fall oysters. Sarcomyxa serotina. Look at that. Man, this is a crazy year for these things. These late fall oysters are reportedly pretty good to eat. Here, one had fallen out of the tree. Right here, look at that. It's got this real yellow base, and the gills all kind of stop in a straight line, and it's got sort of this grayish, olive, greenish brown color, and these are all a bit soft. I think the rain has kind of done away with these. I mean, keep in mind, you know, even though these aren't toxic mushrooms, you could get food poisoning. Look at how waterlogged they are. They're just full of water. So, a big fruiting. You could probably still pick the fresher ones off of this and eat it if you really wanted to. Personally, I just don't find these late fall oysters that appealing. They're a little different than your pleurotus, but this is a really impressive flush of them. Wow. Look at that. Cool. So, this is what happens when they get real old. They just turn to this mush. But there's some younger ones, and it's a pretty tree. So I'm looking at the Sarcomyxa, and then right on the back side of the same tree, we have another one here. This one, Marasmiellus candidus, or the fairy parachute. These are huge. Normally they don't get this big. Man, it has just been a crazy season, but look at the gills under there. How cool that is. They're very cool looking mushrooms. So Marasmiellus candidus, these things can grow in big, huge numbers sometimes, and they just myceliate the whole tree. And you see this cobwebby type stuff. This is the Marasmiellus mycelium, and then they grow these beautiful fruiting bodies, real dark stipe, crazy gills like that, very veiny and wavy, beautiful. So Sarcomyxa serotina and the Marasmiellus candidus, both of these funguses finding a way to live together, eating this log together in harmony in the forest. Beautiful. Right down here I see a couple of types of mushrooms. These guys right here, Ramaria, these ones are white, a white coral mushroom, and tough to identify these down to species. I'm not an expert in the genus at all, so I can't tell you if this is edible or not. Some of them are toxic, some of them are going to give you a really bad GI upset, some of them are okay to eat. I'm not sure which ones, but these sure are growing like crazy right now. These white coral fungus, they're just popping up out of the forest floor everywhere. And right here, some little russulas. So pretty. Look at these. Gorgeous little russulas. I bet you they're just washed out by the rain heavily. All that pigmentation is kind of washed away. But really mysterious and cool looking with the red kind of collected there in the center. And these ones in the brittle gill family. See how it snaps like that? Most mushrooms will bend, and there's a couple hundred different described species of these in the Northwest alone, and there's probably more than that. Some of them are spicy, some of them are not, some of them are bitter. Most of them are not dangerous, but some are considered more inedible, and some will make you vomit. So a nibble and spit test that I show on a lot of my other videos could go a long ways in that genus of brittle gills, the ones that snap like that. So it's an interesting genus of mushrooms, big one. So tough to know exactly what those ones were, especially when they wash out from the rain like that. Right here, some of my more favorite edibles for foraging. Right here, these ones are known as the winter chantrell, or the yellowfoot. Craterellus tubiformis, or the yellowfoot chantrell. It's been raining pretty heavily, so it got them kind of dirty. But these are tough little mushrooms, and you can kind of pack a basket full of them, and they hold up. They refrigerate well, and they keep good in the fridge for, gosh, a couple of weeks. And they can grow in really big numbers. So these are one of my favorites to come across and forage for food. But be careful, they can kind of be like little brown mushrooms and can potentially be mistaken. If you're picking a lot in a hurry, you could accidentally pick an inosebie or something that grows in the same kind of habitat. So just be aware of what you're picking. Here's more right here, and you notice it's got that pretty yellow base. It's umbilicate, so it has that little belly button in the center of the cap. They're hollow in the stem. If I were to break this or cut it open, they're kind of this rusty brown color, but they like to grow where this old decayed wood was. Look at that, that's a nice one. So there you go, decurrent gills. And these aren't even in the same genus as your golden chantrell, so Craterellus, totally different genus. I get an upset tummy from regular golden chantrells, but these ones, not at all. So they're definitely my choice out of the two. I still pick the golden chantrells for my loved ones that enjoy eating them, but I like to eat these, the winter chantrell. You can often find these in really big numbers. If you start getting back there into the brush, often you'll find just tons of them. On one of the last videos, I was finding a lot of them. It's a lot of fun to pick them when you're finding that many. But yeah, isn't that beautiful? These sell commercially too. Chefs love these for how they look on the plate. You know, they really hold up well to cooking. They're a very decorative mushroom. They look very exotic, right? But because of the fact that they grow in such big numbers, commercial buyers typically don't pay a lot of money for these ones. But nonetheless, there is a small list of mushrooms that they will buy, and this is on it because they're such a good edible. Whoa, that's a big boy. Look at that. Boom. Russa breva peas, the short-footed Russa. These make it into a lot of my videos because they're so common. They can get parasitized with a secondary fungus called Hypomyces lactiflorum that will transform this mushroom into the delectable edible lobster mushroom. But this one, as it is, just kind of a plain boring mushroom. They get really big out here. They're very concave like that. Collect rainwater right in the center. White gills. This is a brittle gill, so the gills just really easily flake apart. Squirrels love to eat these. So do Russians and Eastern Europeans, and they pickle these and preserve them, because over the long winter months in the north, this was a viable food source for a long time. So Russa breva peas got a reputation as an okay edible there, even though here in America we don't eat these very much. Even though I've heard of a blindfolded taste test where people ate lobster mushrooms that were infected with the Hypomyces next to some of these cooked the same way, and people preferred these. So, you know, don't discount a mushroom because it's so boring and plain. The Russa breva peas, these guys are huge, and look, there's another one and another one. They've been fruiting forever, and just for the people who love it. One other thing about the brittle gill is when you throw it at a tree, it shatters, where most other mushrooms will bounce off. Nice. So like I mentioned, it's been just a crazy mild fall and winter here in Washington State, and I think it's been pretty mild across the country. Skiers everywhere are frustrated with a lack of snow and freezing temperatures, but it's good news for mushroom foragers, I suppose. And if you live somewhere like Mendocino, your mushroom season's like in full swing. I'm seeing people find porcini down in California and Mendocino, and so y'all are in for an amazing mushroom season too. And this is when a lot of the commercial pickers actually head south to Northern California, finding black trumpets and yellowfoot and hedgehog this time of year. Look right here on the side of the trail. This thing is pretty ornate. That is cool. It's just really standing out. So this one of the Amanitas, it's closely related to the Amanita muscaria, the red one with the white spots. But this one is it's called the Amanita Panthera or the Western Panther group. But as I recently learned, this is not part of the Pantherina clade. This is one of a different section of Amanita. So Amanita Panthera, so panther-like, brown with white spots. These contain some toxins and stuff that lists them as toxic in every field guide. So probably best to avoid this one. White spored Amanita, and growing right on the side of the trail. It's just really a very magical mushroom to complement the forest, and I love coming across those. So cool. Right over here, something really caught my eye. You can see how brightly colored these things are amongst the forest floor. So these ones in the genus Hygrosabe, or the waxy caps. Look at that. Beautiful. These really are the flowers of the fungal world. Hygrosabe, or the wax caps. This one probably Hygrosabe miniata. Very orange one. Some of them are very yellow, and these are cold weather mushrooms. Inedible, but beautiful for photographing and stuff. Small saprobic mushrooms often grow underneath red cedar, which nothing else really does. But these just can live on some decaying matter that not all other mushrooms can. And they just have beautiful colors and very widely spaced gills. And just a beautiful little mushroom. So inedible, but beautiful. Here's a nice example of yellowfoot chantrells, winter chantrells here, growing all through here. And you can see big, there'll be like big clusters of them. Make them pretty easy to pick a lot, all quickly, but they're all over through here. And I can see them all back in there. And so, yeah, I can collect a lot of these pretty quickly and go home with a big basket full of winter chantrells this year, which has just been great. Like, they keep going. So that's a chunky boy. That's a good example of the yellowfoot. Look at that guy. So yeah, they're all over back in here. And I spent a little time off camera collecting, probably 100 of them already. No pick shaming here. It's all right. These mushrooms are just gonna deteriorate and go away out here in a week. So actually, by picking them and carrying them around in the world, you're just dropping spores and spreading their seed even farther. So, if anything, it's probably appreciated that you do that, whether you eat them or, dry them or do whatever you're going to do with them later on. I don't think it really matters at all. So, I see people saying, why you pick those if you're not going to eat every one of them? And it's like, it's not that big of a deal, bud. I understand. It's coming from a nice place, and it's a kind of a conservationist attitude, and I appreciate that. But truly, these mushrooms aren't being harmed by picking them and taking them out of their environment. That one's very umbilicate. It's beautiful. It's got kind of a dry feel to it. Wow, that's a gorgeous one. So, man, that's a big one too. It's just been a phenomenal year for these things. So, you know, I've picked them and given them to friends recently, and everybody around me has been enjoying winter chanterelles this year. Yeah, so check this out. We got a pretty nice bag of winter chanterelles. So it's definitely still forageable edibles out here. Beautiful season for all kinds of wild mushrooms growing at New Year's. You can still get a lot of good edible mushrooms. Wow, look at this fruiting of orange conifer jelly. Very finger-like protrusions coming off of this log. These guys, Dacromyces chrysospermus. Big fruiting of them. You could make some kind of candy fruit mushroom leather or something out of them if you wanted to, but it's always kind of nice to see this big of a fruiting, and they're really common alongside the trail. So, and they're very bright and they can catch your eye. So if you're curious what these are, yeah, conifer witch's butter, orange jelly, orange conifer jelly. A lot of different common names could be used for these, but they're edible, and you should pick one off the log and try it. Just take a little nibble and see what it tastes like, and you might like it. Or you might just think that it's kind of fun that you did it and never do it again, and that's fine too. Right here, another one of these kind of shelf mushrooms growing here on this log, but look at this one's got this white with kind of a blue bruising. Look at that. So blue bruising doesn't always mean hallucinogenic. This one, Patera NAA, this one not super studied, not really known about edibility, but a white rot decayer here on the wood, and it's a little bit more rare than turkey tail and stuff, but they do get that blue bruising. Very bizarre. Cool mushroom. All right, y'all, so there you have it. Nice bag of winter chanterelles going home, and there's definitely good edible mushrooms growing out here still in the woods. So if that answers your question, is mushroom season over? Definitely not. There's always mushrooms, just depends on what you're interested in finding. If you only want to find the most popular, boring, run-of-the-mill mushrooms, you might be limited, but if you expand your fungal knowledge a little bit, you might find a lot more mushrooms that are interesting. And you can do that by watching Mushroom Wonderland. So thanks for joining this episode. We'll see you on the next one. Much love, everybody.